The IHO defines crowdsourced bathymetry as the collection of depth measurements from vessels using standard navigation instruments while engaged in routine maritime operations. As most of you are aware, because this was discussed at the mock last year, 6 years ago, the IHO initiated a collaborative project to enable mariners to collect crowdsourced bathymetry, what we're going to refer to as CSB, recognizing that traditional survey vessels alone were not going to be enough to fill the global data gaps. In response, the IHO formed a working group, which I currently chair, to develop an IHO publication that states the IHO's policy towards and the best practices for the collection and contribution of CSB. During this time, the IHO Data Center for Digital Bathymetry has been supporting this effort by building and hosting a data pipeline that allows the public to upload, discover, and download crowdsourced bathymetry data through a web-based map viewer interface, which we walked through at our last webinar. Like most citizen science and crowdsourcing initiatives, part of the value of this data is that it comes at little to no cost. While this data is oftentimes nowhere near the quality or accuracy of professionally collected data, it can still fill the gaps where data is scarce. It is incredibly useful along coastlines where survey vessels may not visit often, but perhaps a fisherman might frequent daily. And while the data may or may not actually go onto a nautical chart, it can and has been used in aiding in the identification of uncharted features and in assisting in verifying current charted information. But this can only happen if vessels collect and donate depth information while they are on passage. In 2019, IHO Circular Letter 11/2019 went out calling for the approval of edition 2.0 of the IHO publication B12. It was approved, and the guidance document is available online at the URL showed here. This circular letter also asked member states to state their position on the acceptance of crowdsourced bathymetry activities in national waters of jurisdiction. The mock member states that replied positively to this letter are shown in red. That would be Brazil, the Netherlands, and the US. At the request of the IHO, the DCDB implemented a mechanism that now filters out incoming data from those member states that responded either negatively or did not reply at all. The IHO and the Crowdsourced Bathymetry Working Group believe that the lack of initial responses indicated that the circular letter asked was not clear. Earlier this summer, a new circular letter was drafted. It moved away from asking member states if they accepted crowdsourced bathymetry activity, realizing that the word activity can have different meaning to different countries. The revised questionnaire now seeks to gain coastal state support for the provision of crowdsourced bathymetry data collected by ships within their waters. Realizing that the initial circular letter did not provide an opportunity for non-IHO member states to state their position subject, a new letter was written to the chairs of the regional hydrographic commissions requesting that they encourage their associate members and observer states, as well as any other coastal state within their region, to also please provide their position on the provision of CSB data. And so the IHO is encouraging all associate members, observer states, again, the ones from the mock are listed here, to also please review the IRCC circular letter, and if possible, offer a positive response to your Seabed 2030 coordinator, so that is Ms. Cecilia Guzman, prior to the mock, November 30th. The questionnaires that are attached to both circular letters are nearly identical. The questions cover whether or not a coastal country supports or objects to CSB data provision from internal waters, a separate question focusing on territorial sea, and another on EEZ. The questionnaire asks if a country wishes to be informed when such information is received by the DCDB, if a country wishes to receive such information before it goes into the DCDB, and gives you the opportunity to provide any caveats, any additional information about the further dissemination of such data. The results of the initial questionnaire, the one in 2019, is apparent in our data holdings. We currently make over 25 gigabytes of data from nearly 200 vessels available to the public. However, the data you see here, or the track lines of the data you see here, in purple and in red, They're only a subset of the data that has actually come into the DCDB. In response to the feedback provided and not provided to Circular Letter 11/2019, we implemented a geographic filter for this data to take into account countries' positions on the collection of the data in their areas of jurisdiction. You can see the filter working here in both the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal, where the data has been cut off at the coastal countries' EEZs. So globally, this means that an additional 20 gigabytes of data have actually been filtered out. You can see their locations in red. This is data, potentially useful data, which will not be made available to the public or to national or to international mapping programs until countries provide positive responses to the IHO and IRCC circular letters. So how to contribute data to the DCDB? So the DCDB accepts crowdsourced bathymetry contributions through what we refer to as a network of trusted nodes. Now, by trusted node, we mean organizations, companies, or universities that serve as a data liaison between mariners, the actual data collectors, and the DCDB. These trusted nodes may supply data logging equipment. They may provide technical support to vessels. They may be the ones that are downloading the data, and then it might be the one responsible for the data transfer directly to the DCDB. And I'll show a few examples of what I'm talking about. Crowdsourced Bathy data must be provided in either CSV or GeoJSON, and they really need to capture only a minimum amount of data. And so that would be the XYZ and the timestamp. And there are much more details about data formats and metadata that are found in the guidance document, the URL earlier, and also on the DCDB webpage. The majority of our data continues to be provided by customers of Rosepoint navigation software system. In this case, the mariner who uses Rosepoint can enable their electronic charting system log file to record their position, depth, and time. And so then whenever their software or their chart catalog is updated, that data is automatically transmitted to the DCDB. Over the last year, we have been working with McGregor, Germany, who supplies Carnival Cruise Line with voyage data recorders. As you know, VDRs log depth, among other data sets, and are mandated devices for all ships on international voyages. We are hoping that this will lay the groundwork for both expansion throughout the Carnival fleet, but also through various sectors that use VDRs. A few years ago, James Cook University of Australia received $10,000 in government funding to purchase and distribute inexpensive data loggers to over 100 volunteer recreational vessels that are using their own echo sounder and GPS sensors while sailing along the Great Barrier Reef. This data has been provided to the DCDB, and we are hoping to make it publicly discoverable and accessible in the near future once Australia responds to the new circular letter. And lastly, we are excited to say that we have just begun working with PGS on establishing a bathymetric data feed from their vessels directly to the DCDB. The CSB Initiative is now working directly with CBED 2030. CBED 2030 has designated funding meant to accelerate crowdsourced bathymetry activity around the world. The objective here is to facilitate field trials, to collect data in data scarce areas, to grow the excitement about the CSB initiative, and what I feel is most important, to develop a repeatable regional CSB mapping project strategy. In return, a potential program must be able to guarantee the provision of staff, which can hand out data loggers to their community, assist local mariners in setting up, act as a data assembly, and then provide a copy of these data to the DCDB, where it will be used in the JEPCO grid. This year, 200 data loggers were purchased and sent to the Institute for Maritime Technology, who are working with the South African Navy Hydrographic Office and standing up a CSV program. An additional 100 data loggers are currently en route to the Bureau of Marine Transportation in Palau, and 30 loggers are also en route to the Greenland Institute of Natural Resources. We are excited to work with these programs over the next year and are looking to continue to reach out to other areas, to other programs in an effort to support their work and to progress CS activity around the world. So how can hydrographic offices become involved? The single most important thing to be done today is to have the permission of coastal countries to make data that is already being collected in areas of national jurisdiction available to CSB 2030 and to the public. Another way to become involved is join or participate in the IHO Crowdsourced Bathymetry Working Group. If you and your organizations have questions and concerns, if you have ideas on how crowdsourced bathymetry data can be processed, can be used, anything, please come and join the conversation with us. And finally, consider becoming the next CSB 2030 funded crowdsourced bathymetry program. Along with having a conversation here today, please reach out to your CSB 2030 coordinator, Cecilia, continue this conversation with her, and again, please become involved.